Hello everyone and welcome back to yet another episode of the British Culture Podcast. As always, I'm joined here today by Sam. Sam, how's your day going so far?
It's all right. It's okay.
Well, lots of detail there from Sam. Thanks for that in-depth, detailed explanation of your day. Today, we are going to talk about the topic of primary schools. We're going to talk about
Sorry, James, but
Yep.
before we get into that, I think you've forgotten something.
Oh yeah, what have I forgotten?
I think James has forgotten that if you guys enjoy the British Culture Podcast, you can go to englishsponge.com right now, where we have, I believe it's 5 or 6 premium podcast episodes ready for you guys right now. If you enjoy the British Culture Podcast, we're updating things all the time, adding new episodes, so you don't want to miss out.
Yeah, that's true. Thank you, Sam. So on to the topic of today's podcast. We're going to talk about primary schools today and what it was like to grow up as a kid in primary school in the UK, basically. Because I'm sure that growing up in at school in the UK is probably quite different from other countries around the world. So, Sam, I was wondering, the first thing I think we should do is, could you do your best to try and take us through a day in the life of a kid in primary school? Like, from your own experience, what was a typical day like in primary school when you were younger?
Okay, I will walk you through a typical Friday. What year would you like? Are we going to go with reception? Year 1, year 2, year 3, year 4, year 5, or year 6?
Let's do a year in the middle. Let's say something like year 4. Typical day in year 4.
Year 4, so 8 to 9 years old, I believe. So, a typical day would be, of course, entering the primary school in the morning and being dropped off by your parents. You'd then go out onto the playground and run around, have fun, see your friends, all before school even started. And then, when it was 9 a.m, let's say, a teacher would step outside with a whistle and they would blow the whistle. After that moment, everybody on the playground would run into a line, essentially, and you would line up in your classes. There would be one person who was designated as the line leader, the person who would be first of the line every single week, who was in charge of making sure the line was good. Surprise, surprise, I was not ever the line leader. I was never given that luxury, let's say.
I'm shocked.
I know. It was a shocking decision all around. But you would then go in to your class. You would do some pretty basic sort of subjects, usually centered around maths, English, and science. Those would be our morning lessons, usually. Then, after about 3 lessons, if I recall correctly, you would have a short break time, about 20 minutes, where you could eat a snack, drink some juice, and then go outside and play with your friends again. And then, back into class for a couple more lessons, maybe some more maths and science. Maybe you start to get some more interesting classes like history or geography. Then an hour lunch break. Now, some schools had cantinas where you could go and get school dinners, essentially. They did not taste very nice. But what my school had for most of the time was a packed lunch system, where my mum would have to make me a lunch the night before. She would give me some sandwiches, an apple, maybe some chocolate milk or orange juice, put it in a little bag, and that would be my lunch for the day. After you finish eating, you get to go outside, continue playing with your friends, and then, as it's a Friday, you would go back in for the best time of the week. Golden time. the 1 hour a week where you got to play in class, you got to use toys, you got to have fun. We used to have golden time once a week every Friday, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, all of that sounds extremely familiar. Aside from that bit at the end where you mentioned golden time, we didn't have that when I was growing up. Everything else you said sounds more or less exactly the same as my experience at primary school. Let's talk about break time, okay? Because of course, in our school, we had break time. I think it was about 20 minutes in the morning. And then you would get lunchtime, which was about 1 hour, something like that. At break time, personally, most of the time, me and my friends would be playing football, right? Playing football on the courtyard, usually. If it was winter, we would play on like the concrete courtyard. But if it was summer, we may be allowed to go onto the field and play football on the grass. And playing football at break time sometimes resulted in arguments and things. Like, for example, if you scored a goal, but the ball sort of went into obviously the goal was made up of not a real goal most of the time, but just two jumpers, right? A jumper over here and a jumper over here. And that would be the goal posts. And if you scored a goal that went kind of above head height a little bit, just a little bit above head height, people would do this motion and say that the ball went over the bar. And we had a lot of arguments about, did the ball go over the bar or did it go into the goal? Because of course there wasn't actually a bar there. So whether it went over the bar or in the goal was really just up to our own judgment. Football was very cool. We played lots of other games. For example, we played the game It. That's what we called it. We called it It. In America, I believe they call it tag. It's a very simple game where one person is it and they have to chase other people around. And when they touch you, that's when now you're it and you need to chase the other people. And one more game that I remember very clearly was called Stuck in the Mud. Stuck in the Mud is very similar to It. However, when you get tapped, you have to stand there with your legs open and your arms open like this. And now you're stuck in the mud. And you can only become unstuck if another person runs through your legs. Then you were free again to run around. And so those are the two games I remember. Sam, what did you tend to do at break time?
For a large amount of school, they didn't let us play football, at least for the first few years, if I recall correctly. For some reason, they didn't let us play football. So my friends and I would practice WWE wrestling moves on each other instead.
Much more safe, much safer.
And essentially, we would spend our break times just kicking lumps out of each other and just beating each other up. And I remember once. Oh my god! I remember once a kid bit me. We were playing WWE, and I like lifted a kid up with my arms, and he like sank his teeth into my bicep. I remember I dropped him, and I was so shocked that another human being could do that. I was like, what? That's not in the WWE. After a while, they did let us start playing football because I think
I'm not
we just
surprised.
went on about it. Yeah,
they
we
were
just
probably
went
sick
on about
of you.
it forever.
They probably realised that their no football policy backfired spectacularly and caused far more danger than they thought.
A game that I remember was called What's the Time, Mr. Wolf, where a individual who was the wolf would stand facing a wall, so he couldn't see the other people. And the other people's objective would be to get to the wall without the wolf catching them or noticing them. How the game worked was the individuals would shout out, "What's the time, Mr. Wolf?" And Mr. Wolf would have to say 3 o'clock, or 2 o'clock, or 5 o'clock, which represented the number of steps that they could take. But at some point, the wolf would say, "It's dinner time." And he would turn around and chase the people and try and catch some of them. We also had a similar game called Duck, Duck, Goose, where kids would sit around in a circle and one person would be walking around the circle, tapping everybody on the head. And he would be saying, "Duck, duck, 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 goose." And the person he selected as goose had to get up and chase after him. I don't know how to call the person, the ducker. The person tapping people on the head would have to run the whole way around the circle and sit down before getting caught. That is how he would win the game. Yeah, very inventive.
Classic games. And another game that comes to mind is 40-40. Sam, did you ever play 40-40?
I was thinking about it too.
I wonder if I can really explain this game in a short amount of time. But 40-40, one person is looking for... It's kind of like hide and seek, kind of. There is a home base, and one person is the seeker, I guess, looking for everybody else. And you had to close your eyes, right, and count to 40, or is that? I don't know if that's true.
Yeah,
and then you close your eyes, you count to 40, and then you can start looking for everybody else. They have to hide somewhere, and let's say Tom is hiding behind the wall. You would have to say 40-40, see Tom hiding behind the wall right now. Or you might say 40-40, see Steve running across the playground, something like that. That was a good game, but it was, sometimes ended up in controversial situations where you might say 40-40, see Steve standing behind the wall, but then Steve would argue like, "I wasn't standing, I was crouched down behind the wall. You said the wrong thing, so it doesn't count." And is this, did you play this game, Sam, also?
Yeah, we did. We didn't play it so much in school, but it was like a game we played around the neighborhood more. Because obviously in school, the hiding places are limited. Whereas in the neighborhood, that's a much bigger area that you can sort of play in.
Yes, I specifically remember hiding underneath a jacket on the floor and completely fooling the seeker at that time. Let's move away from break time here. Of course, in primary school, there was always something called assembly. If I remember correctly, assembly usually happened right at the beginning of the day. And basically the whole school, all the kids would gather into one big hall. All the teachers and all the kids. Usually the whole day would start with assembly. And there would be announcements, and quite often the headmaster, the head teacher, the headmaster of the school would maybe talk to us for 5 minutes. And quite often we would sing hymns as well. Christian hymns. Some hymns that come... The one hymn that comes to mind is one called Lord of the Harvest. Did you sing this song at school, Lord of the Harvest?
It sounds familiar, but I won't be able to remember it from name alone. Give me a little song, James.
I'm not sure that I can remember.
Go on, give me a little song.
Exactly. It's something like Lord of the Harvest, Lord of the Field.
Yeah, I remember
something.
I do remember it.
Yeah.
The one. So around the harvest time, which is an important Christian festival, there are lots of different songs that they would use just for that time of year. I remember one listing different fruits, so like cabbages and beans. I can't remember exactly the lyrics, but it would just list different like fruits and vegetables and talk about how we were thankful for having them. The best one, though, without any doubt, was the Spring Chicken song. It was amazing because this song came with some actions as well. Swinging about, "I'm a real spring chicken," you would have to put your fists here and flap your arms like you were a little chicken. It was amazing. And we used to love it so much as children. My mum is actually a head teacher at an infant school. And not long ago, she told me that they broke out the spring chicken song at her school. They decided to use it, and the kids went crazy. They really, really enjoyed it.
Yeah, I don't remember the spring chicken song, to be honest. I do think there was some room for different schools to have different songs. We had one which was called Christmas on the Beach at Waikiki. Like, I don't know if anybody else had sang this song, but it was basically a song
it rings
about...
a bell, you know.
Yeah, it was like Christmas on the beach at Waikiki, something like that. And I think it was about Christmas in Australia or something like that.
No, Waikiki's Hawaii.
Is it?
Yeah,
So why?
Waikiki's Hawaii.
Okay, in which case I don't know why we sang that song. It's pretty random.
Mm-hmm. Something you haven't mentioned yet about assemblies in primary school, which is really important, the benches. Now, when you were from reception, which is your first year, all the way up to year 5, your penultimate year, you had to sit on the floor like a little peasant. And I remember, like, all those years sitting on the floor and, like, looking back at the back of the hall. And there were just 2 rows of benches. And that is where the year 6s sat, the oldest group of students. And I remember just my whole school career sitting there, like, red with envy. Just like, oh my God, I wish I was there. I have to sit on the floor, it's not fair. And then I remember when I finally reached year 6 and I got to sit on those benches, overlooking all of the younger peasants sat on the floor. I felt incredible. I felt like a king. That is the closest I've ever felt to being an upper class citizen in my life.
Was this the peak of your life up until this point?
This was the peak of my life. The best moment was that first day sitting on those benches, but like, yeah, I'm older.
Yeah, no, it's funny, we had exactly the same thing. We had benches for year 6, and of course when you reach year 6 you feel so mature, so grown up, and you're actually about 11 years old.
As James mentioned previously, we sing Christian hymns or Christian songs in British primary schools. And it actually shows an interesting cultural thing about Britain. Whilst Britain is a secular society, a society that does not have a religion attached to it, our schools are not secular. In fact, our primary school system, most of our primary schools are linked or have a connection with a local religious denomination. For me, my primary school was a Church of England school. So it was called St. Mary's something something Church of England school. And once a term, or once every other term, what would happen is we would go to the local church. It would be like our big end of year or end of term assembly. And in the local church, they would run a church service for us. Sometimes they would give us sweets, but normally it would just be a lecture about God and things. James, was that your experience as well?
Yeah, more or less. We were, I believe, attached to a church, and we sang lots of Christian hymns, like Lord of the Harvest, like I already mentioned. And the other thing, of course, is that we also, moving on, a good segue, this is a good segue actually, a little bit into school plays as well, because we always did school plays, performances, every year at school, and they were usually a Christian kind of performance. For example, I remember one year we did the story of the birth of Jesus, and the whole class had to be the nativity play, exactly. And so we had to perform different roles in the story of the birth of Jesus. One year I played the role of Joseph, which is Jesus's father, right?
No. Jesus' father is God.
Yes, but what is Joseph then?
Stepfather. He would be.
Is that the correct thing to say?
I mean, technically, because it's not his child. So Joseph.
True. He's just. Joseph was the original stepfather. He's just there. Why is he even part of the story? So I played the role of Joseph, Jesus's stepfather. And and so Sam, did you perform in any school play when you were?
Yes, I did. Now, what I remember from my school is that the younger age groups did the nativity. So from like reception to year 2, you would do the nativity. And then year 3 and 4 and 5 and 6, they would do things that were slightly more interesting, but still religiously linked, of course. I remember very vividly, one year we did Joseph and his Technicolor Dreamcoat, which is a very famous Christian musical. And I played the role of the Pharaoh who is basically Elvis in this play. And yeah, I had a solo in front of everybody, in front of all of the parents. I was a young actor. It's very shocking that I didn't get into Hollywood on performances like that. But English teaching called my name, I guess.
Yeah, you turned down you had many opportunities given to you by Hollywood, but you turned them down to become an English teacher.
Of course.
Yeah.
I don't like the glitz and glamour. That's the problem.
Yeah, believable. The last thing we can talk about on this episode is school trips. Because yes, when you're a kid at primary school, just a couple of times you would go on a school trip somewhere. The one main school trip that I remember the most was in year 6. It was the last year. And we took a trip to the Isle of Wight. If you're not aware, the Isle of Wight is an island just off the south coast of England. And for me at the time, as an 11-year-old, it felt, quite exciting, right? It was the big trip of the year, really exciting. And we travelled down, I think, by boat across to the Isle of Wight, and we all stayed somewhere for like 2 days, a weekend or something. The whole class would sleep there and stay there. And it was really, our first trip away from our parents, really, for the first time. And on this trip, we did lots of adventure activities. To be honest, my memory is a little bit murky on this. I can't remember very well what we did. My memory is a bit murky, but I believe we did lots of adventurous activities. What kind of school trips did you go on, Sam?
Yeah, we had a very similar one in year 6. You finish primary school in year 6, so that's why you do a big trip to sort of wrap it all up. Some of the activities we did were like abseiling, fencing, other things like that. But I remember a very, very sad story from that trip. So, Sam, 11 years old, I think I was 12 at that point. Now, I've always been a romantic at heart. I've always been a lover. There was a girl in my year that I really liked,
Ooh.
And I had liked her for a long time. I had liked her for a really long time. And she had never reciprocated my feelings. So it was an unreciprocated love, we can say. Well, I remember at PGL, that's this big trip that James was speaking about. On the trip, on night 2, there was a dance. And I remember thinking, yeah, tonight is the night. This is when the stars align and we begin our life together, right? After this night, we ride off into the sunset. And I remember speaking to my friends about it, and they all hyped me up. They're like, "Yeah, Sam, you got this. Trust me, you got this." So, really nervous, heart pounding, palms sweating. I remember I walked up to her, and I was like, "Oh, would you like to dance with me?" And she said no, James.
No.
She said no. She said no. And when I tell you, I cried my eyes out for at least an hour. I was bawling uncontrollably for so long. Poor
brutal.
little Sam. The first. That I'm gonna be honest, that was the first in a very, very, very long list of heartbreaks throughout my life. That set the tone for my entire love life up until now, and I'm 25. Okay, that set the tone for it all. So yeah, that's what I remember most from my trip to
do you know why? Do you know why she turned you down? Was there another guy, another boy?
I don't think there was another guy. I think I was just ugly. What are you gonna do? Yeah, what are you gonna do?
So she turned you down, like not for somebody else, but just she would prefer to just be alone with nobody, no dance partner.
Yeah, I'd actually prefer that personally than it to be for somebody else.
True, yeah, it's true. It's probably a bit less brutal. Okay, guys, thank you very much for listening to this podcast. Today we spoke about the typical experience in primary school in the UK. So Sam, do you have any last things to say before we wrap up today?
I do. For the 0.000001% chance that you are listening to this, to the girl who broke my heart in primary school, I am single. Okay, we can give it another go.
It's always worth a shot. You know,
yeah,
you never know.
Hey, you don't shoot, you never score.
Exactly. Maybe she's trying to brush up on her English skills. You know, maybe she's B2 English. Let's hope that Sam's wish comes true. And guys, please, let's all leave Sam comments wishing him all the best with his pursuit of his romantic pursuit. Thank you very much for watching, guys. We do have more episodes of the British Culture Podcast on EnglishSponge.com. So if you like this episode, check out the website. There's a lot more episodes there. Thank you for watching, and I will see you in the next video.